Spine-chilling rain, 7 terrifying true stories unearthed that will haunt your sleep tonight. The storm rattled the streets of Riverside, Ohio, as if nature itself was warning of the horrors to come. The air felt electric, cracked with tension, as thunder growled menacingly in the distance. Inside the convenience store, Jessica anxiously counted down the minutes of her late shift. Outside, rain streaked down the windows like 1,000 clawed hands reaching for her, dragging her attention to the darkness pooling in corners of her mind. Then the phone rang, slicing through the silence. It was Lily, her voice cracking like weak glass. "Mom, there are whispers, in the walls." Jessica's heart sank at her daughter's panicked tone. She brushed it off, though. Kids imagine things, right? The world was heavy enough without imaginary whispers echoing through their crumbling home. She adjusted her grip on the counter, the dim lights casting uneasy shadows across her face, but as the night wore on, doubt crept in, squeezing her stomach like a vice. The neighborhood held secrets beneath its derelict veneer, stories of lost families, strange happenings, and something dark that hid in the veil of night. Her gut twisted with unease, and when she glimpsed a figure darting between houses outside, she nearly dropped the pack of gum in her hand. A glimpse, just a shadow. It clawed at her mind, crawling with needling anxiety. Finally, she clocked out and drove home, the storm howling as if mocking her plight. Inside their small house, the air felt thick, oppressive. She peered out the rain-splattered window, catching sight of a shadow moving again, darting from house to house like a predator stalking its prey. The hairs on her neck stood up. This was not a safe haven, it was a trap. Heart pounding, she summoned her courage and stepped inside, desperately trying to shake the weight of dread pressing against her chest. "Mom." Lily's voice called from the living room. Jessica hurried toward it, catching a hesitant expression on her daughter's face. "They're still whispering," she insisted, shaking with fear. Suddenly, the memory of Mr. Carter, their new neighbor, bubbled up, his creepy smile, his questions creeping under her skin. Unsettled, she turned her back to the window, forcing herself to breathe. Before she could process it, her thoughts spiraled again. This was just a storm. Just some unsettling weather. She clutched Lily's hand, the softness grounding her. But outside, the gusts intensified, howling like a chorus of tormented souls, as if the storm itself was alive, taunting her fears. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Panic churned in Jessica's chest like a boiling cauldron as she recalled the stories of the homes like hers, of families who simply vanished when storms raged. She wasn't about to become another whisper in Riverside's dark history. But Mr. Carter appeared once more in her mind, his eyes glinting with something unsettling, a hunger, an intrigue that made her gut twist. Just then, the silence was broken by a crash against their door. Jessica's heart leapt into her throat as she turned to Lily and Marcus, who looked up at her wide-eyed and trembling. Shadows loomed across the edges of her vision again, ceaseless and predatory, and it dawned on her the night was just beginning, and the lines between safety and vulnerability were about to blur. What had she awakened? With the storm raging outside and uncertainty nipping at her heels, Jess understood one thing: the whispers weren't just in the walls. They seeped into their lives. She tightened her grip around her children, heart racing, a chilling realization washing over her. Facing Mr. Carter might reveal truths darker than the storm itself, a truth that could tear her family apart. The wind howled like a wounded beast, shaking the house, pulling at the very seams of their refuge. Each thunderclap echoed in Jessica's chest, merging with the pounding of her heart. "Stay close," she whispered, squeezing Lily and Marcus's hands. They huddled together on the living room floor, shadows of furniture looming over them like dark sentinels. The crash against the door had left an unsettling silence in its wake, punctuated only by the rain tapping against the windows. It felt like a breath held too long, tension coiling tighter with every second. "Mom," Lily whimpered, her voice small as she peeked over the edge of the couch, "what's out there?" "I don't know, honey." Jessica forced a reassuring smile, but bile rose in her throat as if the very food she had consumed was turning on her. She stepped forward, a pit of dread settling in her stomach, daring herself to see what had caused the noise. The door stood firm, but her mind raced back to Mr. Carter. He had shown up on their doorstep just a few days before, with an unusual charm that felt more like a mask. Just a neighborly welcome, he had said, but the way he had lingered too long, his eyes scrutinizing not just the house but Jessica and her children, felt intrusively invasive. A resounding thud made her jump, cutting through her thoughts. Her hands shook as she approached the door, every nerve tingling with fear. Just as she reached for the knob, a voice, a low, hiss-like rasp, slithered out from behind the walls. help us," not just whispers, they had formed words. They weren't mere echoes but desperate pleas, pulling at her sanity. Jessica stepped back, heart racing with a mix of horror and disbelief. "Did you hear that?" She turned to Lily and Marcus. They nodded, eyes wide, tears glistening like beads in the dim light. With each shudder of thunder, her resolve weakened. "We need to get out of the house," she stated, clenching her teeth. "We need to find help." "But where?" Outside, the storm was relentless, and the streets were treacherous. Before she could turn toward the back door, a loud knock reverberated through the house. This time, it was joined by menacing laughter, echoing in the storm. "Open up, dear Jessica. I saw you come home." The voice belonged to Mr. Carter, it slid through the cracks like a serpent. "You can't hide from me." Panic shot through her veins. What did he want? She skittered back into the living room, desperately searching for something, anything that could protect them. Keeping the children close, she glanced toward the windows. That shadow moving so quickly earlier now felt like it could crawl from every dark corner, invading their sanctuary. "Mom, what do we do?" Marcus's tiny voice cut through the mounting anxiety, but Jessica didn't have answers. She was just as lost, her mind a maw of twisted thoughts, battling fears that felt more real than the rain pounding outside. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of broken voices that seemed to summon the darkness itself. "Join us, be one with us," it beckoned, the words weaving into her thoughts. A thick fog of despair wrapped around her, squeezing like a vice. Suddenly, a crack of light illuminated the living room briefly, and in that second, she spotted something, a glint of metal under the couch. Instinctively, she lunged forward to grab it. A kitchen knife. Not a weapon she had envisioned, but it was better than nothing. The laughter outside morphed into something horrid, twisted by the storm. "They can't help you." "Shut up!" she yelled, anger suddenly surging through her fear. The ground shook beneath them as a loud crash came from the door, splintering wood echoed painfully in her ears. It wasn't just the storm holding them in, something worse clawed at the boundaries of their reality, and there it was again, the glint of eyes, shadowed figures pooling in the corners, growing closer with every heartbeat. In her gut, she felt, perhaps it was too late to escape. With the knife clenched tightly, Jessica turned towards her children, fury igniting her fear. "We fight. We find a way out." But before she could lead her family to the next step of their desperate escape, something moved behind her. A flicker of movement that wasn't just shadows, it was too solid, too real. "Mom," Lily's voice trembled. Jessica had to face whatever lurked in their nightmare, but the thunder crashed again, louder this time, as if the storm was laughing along with Mr. Carter. Then, silence, and that dreadful question hung, thick in the air. Did she really want to know what awaited them on the other side? The moment stretched, heavy and pregnant with dread. What was lurking just beyond the door, waiting in the storm? A soft scraping sound broke the silence, like nails dragged across wood. Jessica stiffened, adrenaline spiking through her veins. It was time to confront what was hidden in the shadows. The laughter from outside grew louder, melding with the eerie whispers echoing in her mind. Fight or flight, she thought. But there was nowhere to hide. Stay behind me, she instructed, her voice harder now, almost a growl. She took a breath and swung around to face the darkened corner of the room. A figure stirred, melting from the shadows as if it were born from the very darkness. A face emerged, a stranger, gaunt and twisted, with hollow eyes that seemed to devour light. He stood there, crooked smile stretching unnaturally across his lips. "Don't be afraid," he hissed, and Jessica felt a gasp of horror escape her lips. The air turned cold, chilling her to the bone. "Get away from us!" Marcus yelled, gripping Lily's arm tightly. But the creature paid no mind, its attention locked on Jessica. "Help us, join us," the figure breathed, its voice layered with echoes of other tormented souls. Jessica's heart raced as she felt herself teetering on the brink of madness. "Get back!" she screamed, raising the knife, the blade catching what little light there was. The figure recoiled momentarily, and she seized on the moment, racing towards the back of the house, dragging her children with her. The rest of the house felt different now, the walls vibrating with unseen energy. Fear flooded her senses as they stumbled into the narrow hallway, shadows dancing wildly at the edges of her vision. "Mom, don't let it get us!" Lily cried, her small frame quaking. Jessica's fingers tightened around the knife as they reached the back door, but the moment of hope shattered when she found it locked. She banged on the wood, desperation clawing at her throat. "Let us out!" From somewhere in the distance, the laughter echoed again, deep and loathsome. "You think it's just a door? You belong to us now." The voice of Mr. Carter wormed its way into her consciousness, the implication clear: this was no ordinary storm, it was a threshold to something far worse. "This way!" Panicking, Jessica led them toward the kitchen, hoping to find another exit. All the while, the whispers grew louder, like a chorus rising to a fever pitch. "Help us, join us, be one with us." With every step, Jessica felt the air thicken. Bitterness flooded her mouth, and the shadows itched at her skin, gnawing at her sanity. She pushed through the kitchen door, praying for even the slightest glimmer of hope, but the sight before her struck her numb. The back door stood ajar, but it was not empty. Shadows jutted out from the walls, encroaching, twisting impossibly, writhing towards her like something alive. "Join us," they whispered again, sweet and poisonous, urging her to surrender. "Marcus, grab Lily!" she barked, too focused on the encroaching darkness. "We have to go." They darted for the door, but the shadows undulated like smoke, curling around her legs. She fought against them, but every second felt like an eternity. Just as she thought they might break free, a pair of icy hands latched onto her ankle. "No! Let me go!" she screamed, but the grip tightened. In that moment, time froze. The door swung wildly in the gust of wind, revealing the chaotic storm outside, but it felt like a prison of horrors. "Help us!" More voices joined the fray, filling her mind with dark promises. But in a sudden surge of clarity, Jessica twisted the knife, striking down with ferocity. A scream echoed through the chaos, mingling with the storm outside, then silence. Yet a whisper remained, shadowing her thoughts. "You can't escape." As the shadows retreated slightly, Jessica seized the opportunity. She hurled the door wide, stumbling into the tempest. Rain poured down like knives, slicing into her skin, but she couldn't stop now. "Run!" she shouted, her heart racing like a wild animal, but an unexpected chill caressed her neck, the air turning ominous. Something was watching from the depths of darkness, waiting for the moment to follow. The trio dashed down the steps, but as they veered into the night, a blinding flash of light illuminated a figure standing in the storm's maw. A grotesque smile spread over its face. "Welcome back," it called, and just like that, the shadows surged forward again, pulling Jessica back into the tempest, and then the world went dark. What lay beyond the figments of her wildest nightmares was only just beginning. Jessica gasped as reality crashed back in. She was sprawled on the ground, rain pouring mercilessly. The tempest roared around her, a cacophony of wrath. Marcus and Lily were beside her, their faces pale with fear. The figure's grin was gone, swallowed by the blackness, but they could still feel its presence lurking in the shadowy depths. "Mom!" Lily cried, trembling. "Where did it go?" "I don't know," Jessica replied, her voice shaky but resolute. She pushed herself up, the cold ground wet beneath her palms. The children were still clinging to her, desperate for safety. "We need to move. Now." Without waiting for a response, she grabbed their hands and pulled them into a sprint away from the house. The wind howled, almost mocking them as it whipped around. The storm roared, but it was the distant whispers that sent a razor of fear down her spine. "Join us, be one with us." As they ran, visions of the house crowded Jessica's mind, those lifeless eyes, the twisted smile. Waves of dread crashed over her until she couldn't tell if the rain on her face was from the sky or her own tears. "Where are we going?" Marcus panted, his voice a mix of panic and determination. "Just away from here." Jessica's feet pounded against the soaked earth. "We need to get to the road. We'll find help." But as they moved farther from the house, the shadows seemed to stretch and elongate, almost as if they were being drawn toward them. Jessica dared a glance back, her heart pounding. The storm was no ordinary storm, it pulsated with a life of its own, the shadows writhing violently as if they longed to break free from the confines of the house. "Mom, look!" Lily pointed, her voice edged with terror. Jessica turned to see the grotesque figure re-emerging from the tempest's heart. It drifted closer, its limbs ragged and flowing like dark smoke. "You can't escape," it hissed, the words wrapping around her like icy tendrils. "Keep running!" Jessica shouted, urging her children forward. They stumbled through mud and debris, pain in their legs barely registering with the imminent threat chasing them. But each step felt heavier, as if the air became thicker with every heartbeat. The road grew closer, but the whispers became a cacophony, drowning out their thoughts. It was no longer just one voice. A chorus of tortured souls called out, begging for release, begging for them to join the abyss. Jessica clutched the knife tightly, its blade slick with water and fear. Suddenly, a flash of lightning lit up the night, and in that brief moment, she saw the edges of the clearing ahead. There just ahead was the road, marked by the fleeting glow of a distant street lamp. Hope ignited within her chest. "Over there!" she cried, pulling them forward, but as they burst into the clearing, a dense fog rolled in from nowhere, engulfing them completely. The dim street lamp flickered and faded, cloaking them in darkness. Jessica's breath quickened, fear clawing at her throat. "Mom, I can't see." Lily whimpered, clutching her little brother tight. "Stay close. Don't let go." Jessica cried, panic swallowing her words, and then, terror seized them as a new sound broke through the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, drawing closer with each heartbeat. "We've been waiting for you," the figures in the mist chanted, the shadows coalescing around them, forming dark silhouettes that seemed to close in from every direction. "Run!" A primal scream erupted from Jessica's throat. She pushed through the fog, dragging her children behind her, but it was no use. The mist was alive with horrors yet unseen. The figures moved closer, the voices twisted into a maddening plea, and panic threatened to break her resolve. "Jessica!" they cried, a mix of familiarity and dread lacing their tone. Was it the thing from the house, or something worse? She couldn't think, she had to survive. When she felt fingers graze her arm, she instinctively swung the knife, heart pounding. "Stay away! You can't have us!" Silence fell suddenly, heavy and cold. The world felt suspended in time, every heartbeat echoing like a gunshot. But just as quickly, the silence shattered. They surged forward, shadows and whispers erupting into chaos again, and Jessica felt an entrancing pull. As her grip faltered, she heard them again. "Join us." In that moment, an unnerving question filled her mind. What if escaping was just the beginning? The shadows laughed, and Jessica's heart sank deeper, a fear buried within her that she couldn't yet comprehend. The mist thickened, swallowing them whole. What nightmare awaited them now? The mist pressed in tightly, swirling like a suffocating blanket, and every twist and turn Jessica took felt less like flight and more like a dance with death. She could no longer tell where the road was or if they were even still on it. The air felt electric, thick with a tension that made her skin crawl. "Mom! I can't breathe!" Marcus whimpered, the terror lacing his voice, piercing through her panic. "Just hold on," she shouted, forcing herself to maintain their grip. Her heart thundered. The whispers grew louder, a tempestuous tide of pleas and shrieks, each one tugging at her resolve. "Join us," they beckoned, twisted voices melting into one another, merging into a dissonant harmony that resonated in Jessica's bones. "Please, no," she breathed, pushing forward. She couldn't let them. Not now. Suddenly, something shifted in the darkness. A figure, no longer just shadows, took form within the fog. Jessica halted mid-sprint, breath hitching as she squinted through the gloom. An impression of something tall, vaguely human but grotesque, unnatural. Its face bore a mouth that stretched far too wide for its head, grinning as it regarded her with eyes that flickered like dying embers. "Don't leave us, Jessica," it hissed, a taunting echo that dripped with malice. "No. We have to go." She pulled Marcus and Lily tight to her, but the sweet, innocent warmth of her children felt distant, strange and slippery, as if she were losing their grip in more ways than one. That the air shimmered around them, releasing bursts of fevered energy that made Jessica's hair stand on end. The whispers surged again, rising and falling like waves on a stormy sea. They promised safety, a home, all she had ever wanted. "You are one of us now. Come join us." Panic clawed at her throat. She began to back away, her hold on the knife tightening. Jessica's mind reeled as panic transformed into something darker. What if they weren't just chasing shadows? What if the shadowy figures had come to claim them for a reason, a sinister purpose she couldn't comprehend? "Mom, I'm scared." Lily's voice trembled, the fear evident in her tone. "Stay close," Jessica shouted again, her pulse a wild drum in her chest. She pushed forward, the shadows clawing at her heels, hungry and dark. They ran further in blind terror, following Jessica's instinct, but the fog remained relentless. It twisted and turned, as if it were a living entity trying to ensnare them. Every breath became heavier, every step a battle against the weight of unseen eyes watching them, waiting, hungry. Just then, a sudden light broke through the murk, a firefly flicker that seemed to pulse with life. Jessica squinted, tears mingling with rain as her heart soared for a moment. "Look," she urged, pointing toward the glow. But the moment of hope was short-lived. The glowing shape expanded until it revealed itself not as salvation, but an apparition cloaked in despair. "Welcome," it bellowed, its voice echoing like thunder. It was the thing from the house, and thousands of souls intertwined, all trapped within a grotesque form, each face twisted with eternal anguish. "No! No!" Jessica screamed, her voice lost in the roar of anguish that filled the mist. Around her, the haunted apparitions cackled crazily, their voices spiraling into a frenzy. They reached out, hands made of shadows, swirling around her, grabbing for her children. Jessica lunged forward again, the knife gripping her palm like a lifeline. "Mom! Help!" Marcus cried, as he was pulled back slightly by a force she couldn't see. With each pulse of the figure's laughter, Jessica felt something in her begin to unravel. "Fight!" she shrieked at herself. "Fight for them!" With a surge of adrenaline, she swung the knife wildly, slicing through the prophecies of despair, yelling, "You can't have us!" In that critical moment, the fog surged violently, life and terror swirling chaotically. She felt a tug on her heart, a pull that sought to break her resolve completely. Fear, grief, desperation. What would she do to keep her children safe? The stakes mounted higher in the thundering chaos around her. As she fought the darkness, as she felt herself slipping away, she understood one horrifying truth: sometimes, fighting against the nightmare only deepens its grip. And then, just when she felt the phantom fingers grasp at her throat, a voice broke through the voice of hope, off in the distance. "Jessica! We can save you!" But that voice belonged to someone she thought lost. Who was it? With the whispered promises swirling around, would they be friend or foe? "Jessica!" The voice called again, but it was too late. The shadows screamed, and the mist thickened around them, drowning all light. What awaited them now lay cloaked in the depths of pure darkness and uncertainty. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest like a war drum, each thud echoing the chaos of the swirling mist. The acrid scent of decay filled the damp air, and she struggled to focus amid the cacophony of whispers, now piercing and urgent. The figure loomed closer, its twisted grin widening impossibly, shadows rippling around its form like hungry serpents. "Mom!" Marcus cried, his hand slipping from her grasp for a horrifying heartbeat. Jessica nearly choked, wrenching him back with a fierce desperation. His small stature felt fragile, a balloon in the storm, and she wouldn't let him go. Not ever. In that moment of confusion, the face of the looming figure flickered, morphing, revealing a glimpse of someone she knew. It was her mother, eyes wide and pleading, mouth contorted in an eternal scream. "Help us, Jessica!" "No!" She gritted her teeth, squeezing her eyes shut. She refused to look at the twisted shapes that whispered promises of terror. "We have to run." But even as she turned, her feet felt rooted to the spot. The earth beneath her turned soft, almost liquid, as it warred with the invisible force claiming her. It was as if the shadows fed off fear, growing heavier, dragging them deeper into despair. Lily's small hand shook in hers, trembling with each frenzied heartbeat. "Mom, what are they?" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air like fog, seeping into Jessica's mind. They were nightmares, hungry specters creeping at the edges of her sanity, the amalgamation of all her fears given body. Were these lost souls? Or were they born from something darker within her? "Keep moving." She forced herself to take one shaky step, then another, pulling her children alongside her. Just when she felt the unwavering grip of panic clutching her throat, the echo returned. "Jessica! We can save you." This time, the voice resonated not just in her mind, but within the encroaching darkness as well. It felt familiar. A wave of conflicting emotions crashed over her: hope, dread, disbelief. It was Arthur, her brother. Hadn't he died years ago in that car accident? As the shadows squirmed, the grip on her heart slackened for a moment, but the relief was short-lived. Is it really him? She battled the suspicion rising like bile in her throat. What if it was a trick? She couldn't break a promise again. "Keep moving." Jessica screamed again, her voice raw and desperate, threading through the oppressive fog. But the more resolute she grew, the more the shadows encroached, coiling tighter around her. She felt them tighten like a noose, binding her spirit and drawing her closer to the nightmarish figure of her mother, lurching, shrieking, twisted in torment. "Jessica!" The voice grounded her, carving a path through the storm of horror. "Just trust me." "Marcus, Lily." She gasped, her urgency pushing her to move, to flee, but dread sunk its claws deeper at the sight of her mother's face morphing into that of her brother, an invitation long stored in sorrow. "Can you hear me, Jess?" "I'm here." Then something shattered. Light burst through the fog, a blinding flash that drove back the shadows, casting away their grip. Jessica squinted against the harsh brightness, heart racing as she sensed the apparition falter, but in that fleeting moment, she caught herself. Was it them or was it the lies of the mist? "Mom! Don't! It's not him!" Marcus wailed, lunging for his mother, the hope in his voice tumbling over doubt. With newfound fury, Jessica burst forth, feeling the wind slice through the fog. She grasped the knife tighter, every muscle screaming with the tension of survival. "You are not my family!" she yelled, punctuating her assertion with a swing of the blade against the spectre, and then silence swept over everything. The world stilled. Where there should have been shadows, they vanished, leaving a frigid emptiness in their absence. Jessica froze, breath held tight as she felt the mist pull back, retreating like a storm cloud after the dawn, but the stillness held something else awaiting silence. Jump! An instinct compelled her as she sensed something lurking, ready to strike. She looked back for the voice of her brother, but the agony of uncertainty strangled her heart. Arthur! She cried, the name reverberating in the void that now surrounded them. What would darkness reveal in this moment of fragile silence? Would it be their salvation or a deeper descent into madness? The gasp of wind shushed any thought of escape, and shadows wrapped around them anew. The air was thick with anticipation, a suffocating weight Jessica could almost taste. Every breath felt constricted, as if the tendrils of darkness were curling around her throat again. She could feel Marcus and Lily's small bodies trembling beside her. The shadows slithered closer, whispering secrets that twisted her stomach into knots. Stay close, she hissed, gripping their hands tighter. The echoes of her brother's voice filled her mind, mingling with a choking fear. The fog churned around them, dense and suffocating, but every instinct screamed at her to push forward. Ahead, an indistinct form took shape, dark and faceless, pulsating like a wound. You cannot escape, it murmured, its voice scratching at her ears, a rasping wheeze that teased her resolve. The words echoed like a twisted lullaby, caressing the edges of her sanity. Run! She urged, dragging her children with her as they stumbled through the murky haze. The ground shifted beneath her feet, slick and treacherous, trying to pull her down into its suffocating embrace. Despair clawed at her throat, yet not a hint of hesitation flickered in her heart. Her children needed her to be strong. Mom, where do we go? Lily's voice cracked, rising above the din, loaded with a panic that made Jessica's heart ache. Anywhere but here. She shouted back, each word a desperate lifeline tossed into a turbulent sea. With the cold seep of dread creeping behind them, they plunged forward, the mist thrumming with malicious glee. An unbearable weight pressed on her shoulders as she turned back for a moment. The figure now wore her mother's face again, grief pooling in its hollow eyes. Jessica, please. It implored, voice dripping with anguish. You know me. No. Shaking her head, she forced her gaze away, unwilling to let the memory of her mother drown her in sorrow. But doubt gnawed at her. What if it were really her? Could she risk leaving it behind? Suddenly, the fog swirled, a cyclone of confusion wrapped around her like a shroud. The mist twisted into fingers, reaching out, it pulled at her clothes, winding in her hair. Jessica. The voice whipped around her, shifting from her mother to Arthur, then back to that creature. Each call was tinged with desperation, teasing familiarity, and it sent her heart racing, each beat closer to the edge of madness. Move! She hissed again through clenched teeth, feeling the hopelessness gnawing at her resolve like a parasite. Just then, a piercing scream sliced through. Marcus stumbled, legs caught in unseen chains. Mom, help! His eyes blazed with uncontained terror, the shadows swirling around him like locusts, wrapping him tighter in their grasp. No! Adrenaline surged through Jessica as she lunged for him, dragging Marcus back into her arms, but the shadows only tightened, the atmosphere thickened, a vicious current threatening to topple them as hope began to slip away. But just in that moment, a flicker of silver light ignited in the distance. It pierced through the fog and split the darkness, leaving trails of shimmering hope. This way! She cried, feeling an odd compulsion to follow it. I can't! Marcus screamed, voice raw. Lily clung to Jessica with all her strength, her small frame shaking, trembling as though swaying in a storm. No! You will not take my children. Pure rage boiled in Jessica's veins. She whirled on the encroaching shadows, shouting, You are nothing. At that instant, a wave of fury surged within her, charging her action. She drew the knife, feeling its cool handle steady her hand, and scattered the darkness surrounding Marcus, gasping as the shadows recoiled from the blade. The flicker of light blazed brighter, illuminating an escape. Run! Now. She pressed forward, not daring to look back as the shadows shrieked in fury, tearing at their flesh like wolves at prey. As they sprinted toward the blinding light that promised salvation, a chilling thought ripped through her mind. If this force could take the form of the lost, what would stop it from coming for them next? Then, just as they neared the light, it flickered and dimmed, as if someone whispered a promise of retribution. Hope and dread wrestled in her heart as the world around them trembled. Salvation or damnation? Jessica. The voice of her brother called again, louder this time. Would she reach the light before it extinguished forever? Or would the darkness consume them whole once more? The light flickered once more, wavering like a dying star, and Jessica felt her heart pound even harder. With her fingers clenched around Marcus and Lily, she propelled them forward, desperation fueling her legs. Keep moving. She yelled, her voice fighting against the suffocating darkness. The mist thickened, pulling at them with an icy breath, but the silver light was just ahead. Closer now. They could reach it. Yet, even as the glimmer beckoned, something else stirred in the shadowy abyss. The air turned electric, zapping through her veins, cold sweat dripping down her back. Then, from the depths of the fog, a figure emerged, tall and gaunt, a silhouette stitched from despair. It stepped into the light, eyes burning like embers in a bonfire. You will pay for what you've done. It thundered, the voice reverberating like the strike of lightning, chilling her to her core. Run! Jessica shouted again, but this time, terror beat unevenly in her chest. The figure was hauntingly familiar, its presence weaving together strands of her forgotten past. Flashes of memories flickered behind her eyes, laughter with her brother, the warmth of her mother's embrace, and the day everything broke apart. Mom! Lily screamed, a sound that pierced Jessica's heart. The shadows around them pulsated, eager to engulf, the dark figure's presence reeking of vengeance. Mom is gone, Jessica gasped, furious and terrified. We have to go. She didn't look back, but the pain of those words echoed through her, slicing deeper than any knife. Panic surged again as the darkness closed in on them, hungry and relentless. Suddenly, Marcus slipped from her grip, the ground beneath him more alive than before, grasping at his small feet. No! Marcus! She lunged forward, but before she could grasp his hand, the darkness enveloped him. Jessica! He cried, voice muffled, swallowed by the shadow. Marcus! Jessica's heart plummeted, dread pooling in her stomach like a weight. Her thoughts raced. What could she do? Could she really leave him behind in this hell? But Lily's tiny hand squeezed her arm. Mom, don't leave me. The guilt surged, driving her instincts. I want tea. But standing firm wasn't an option, the very fabric of the darkness was unraveling, fracturing her resolve. She could feel it clawing at her sanity, each second stretching into an eternity. Take my hand, both of you. Desperation laced her voice as she rallied her will, fighting against the growing despair. They needed to escape this nightmare together. With urgency, she reached into the swirling darkness again, grasping at Marcus' last echo, willing him to return. Marcus! You have to fight. Hold on tight. At that moment, the cold darkness seemed to relent for a heartbeat. She lunged again, feeling the warmth of a tiny hand slipping into hers. Then Marcus was back, eyes wide with fear, trembling but safe. Jessica felt an overwhelming rush of hope. Gripping their hands, she turned toward the flickering light. This way. We have to go. The shadows roared behind them, furious and wrathful, clawing at their heels as they raced forward. The silver light, now glowing brighter than the sun, felt like a heartbeat echoing in the distance. Then, just as they stepped closer, it vanished, swallowed whole by the abyss. Terror seized her throat, and her mind swirled in confusion as darkness swallowed their path. Would they be lost forever? No. Together. She shouted, anchoring her children. We can't stop now. But doubt pierced through her like an icy needle. What if the shadows weren't just chasing them, but had prepared a far worse fate lurking in the depths? What if escape wasn't freedom, but another trap? In that fleeting moment, Jessica's thoughts spiraled deeper. Where would the next step lead? Salvation or a fate worse than darkness? As they stumbled into the void that swallowed their last glimmer of hope, Jessica realized she could no longer tell where her memories ended and the eternity of the darkness began. What awaited them next? Would they face a terror beyond their understanding, or a way through that would fracture their souls? An echoing voice whispered from within the gloom, "You cannot escape forever," and behind them, the shadows whispered back, a chorus of despair waiting patient and unyielding. Jessica pulled Lily and Marcus closer, their bodies trembling with fear. The shadows continued their sinister embrace, thickening like a fog that twisted around her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching, invisible and predatory. "Stick together," she urged, but her voice faltered, an echo swallowed by dread. Each step they took felt heavier than the last. The darkness wove itself through her limbs, pulling, dragging, threatening to tear them apart again. Panic gripped her tight, breaths came in short, desperate gasps. Everywhere she turned, the air felt pregnant with whispered threats, the shadows caressing her skin like cold fingers. "Where are we going, Mom?" Marcus asked, his voice small, a tiny spark struggling against the growing storm. Her heart ached at the vulnerability in his tone. "I don't know. But we can't stop." Beneath their feet, the ground shifted, a tangible menace. It pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with the fear thrumming through her veins. The specter from before, she could feel it lurking just beyond the veil, waiting for them to falter. Each breath became a countdown, each heartbeat a reminder of what they ran from. Then came the sound, a soft, insidious whisper slicing through the air. Jessica, it floated around them, curling like smoke. The voice invoked memories she couldn't fully recall but recognized enough to send shivers down her spine. "Come back to me, Lily, Marcus, stay close," she shouted, scanning the darkness for any sign of the figure, any flicker of that burning gaze. The shadows writhed with more urgency as her desperation grew. The children clung to her, their little bodies trembling against her side. "Mom, I'm scared," Lily whimpered, tears glistening in her wide eyes. "I know, baby. Just hold on." Jessica squeezed her hand, resolve propelling her onward, despite the terror clawing at her mind. But the whispers intensified, rising to a cacophony. "You abandoned us. Now, you must pay." Shadows shrouded her vision, distorting her sense of direction. Were they still running in a straight line, or twisting through some endless labyrinth of despair? "Run! Just run!" she yelled again, but the shadows pulsated in a cunning rhythm, draining her strength. Every footfall echoed, each repulsive whisper grinding against the hope she fought to sustain. Then suddenly, a beam of light shot through the darkness, blinding them. Jessica stumbled, momentarily disoriented. Her heart raced, and for a breath, she dared to hope. But the light flickered and waned, revealing a grotesque scene unfolding before them. Ghastly faces emerged from the shadows, elongating into expressions of pure malice. "Mother!" a voice called, striking through her resolve. The voice was distant, pleading, and yet chilling in its familiarity. It pained her to recognize the tone, the pitch. It was the last person she thought she'd encounter here. "Mom, don't!" Marcus cried, shaking her. But it was too late. In the briefest moment, she saw the figure again, the specter that haunted her past. "You thought you could leave us?" it hissed, the words slicing like daggers. "You can't run from your sins." The ground trembled beneath their feet, as if the very earth reacted to the dark figure's presence. Cold fear enveloped Jessica, she felt the panic gnawing at her heart. They were surrounded now, the shadows closing in with an insatiable hunger. Breath caught in her throat, she realized the dark power was more than a mere tormentor, it was a mirror reflecting her deepest guilt. "Stand back!" she shouted, the words raw with fierce determination. Yet, the shadows were relentless. "You cannot escape forever," they echoed again, weaving through her mind, pulling at the very strings of her being. With fear burning into her chest, Jessica prepared to fight. She had to protect them, do anything to save her children. But how could she face something born from the darkest corners of her own soul? With a sudden jolt, Marcus tugged at her arm, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and curiosity. "Mom, where do we go now?" Jessica glanced over her shoulder. The darkness swirled, taking on shapes and faces of the past, and for one heart-stopping instant, she hesitated. Was there a way out? Was it even possible? The darkness leered back at her, hungry for her fear, ready to reclaim what it believed was rightfully its. "Together," she said, forcing strength into the alley of despair looming closer. They had to confront the shadows awaiting them, but would they uncover a path to freedom or fall into the depths of the void? And from the shadows, something tangible stirred, germinating fury against their desperate unity. "You think you can simply escape," it whispered, intoxicatingly sweet and malevolent. What lay ahead remained a terrifying unknown, but one thing was certain, the shadows weren't done with them yet. Jessica's heart raced as the shadows thickened around them, suffocating her resolve. Fear gripped her throat like a vice. She could feel Lily and Marcus beside her, trembling, but their warmth anchored her. "We need to break through," she said, forcing a calmness she didn't feel into her voice. The darkness pressed closer, eager, ravenous. Echoes of her past surrounded them, whispering secrets she had long buried. But she would not let it take her children. "Stay together," she urged, gripping their hands tighter. "Whatever happens, we face this together." Panic and terror surged, but in that moment, doubt flickered in her mind. Could they really fight the specters of their own making? Silently, memories cascaded over her, faces from long ago swirling into the chaos like ghosts. Her mother's sweet laughter intermingled with angry shouts and memories of betrayal. Each twisted shadow looked like a plea, a parched echo of something lost. "Mom, I'm scared." Lily's small voice broke through the haze, urging Jessica's focus. "I know, sweetheart. But we have to be brave." Determination coursed through her veins, igniting a fire she thought had long died. "On the count of 3, we run toward the light." "But what if it gets us?" Marcus whimpered, the haunting memories stitching fear into every heart-pounding beat. "What about the shadows?" "Listen." Jessica's voice grew stronger, fueled by love. "I want to let them take you. They can't have you." She locked eyes with Marcus and Lily. In their fear, she saw her own and knew they could fight back together. With whispered encouragement, she counted down. 1, 2. Before she could finish, the dark figure loomed closer, its breath a fetid whisper of despair. "You cannot escape forever." 3. Jessica shouted, pulling her children with her. They sprinted towards the fleeting light, which felt like hope, a lifeline. Instinct drove them forward, the force of their love amplifying their courage as they pushed through the suffocating mist, but shadows lunged, snatching at their limbs, hungry for a claim. Jessica fought against their cold grip, adrenaline forcing her body forward while the voices shrieked, dissonant screams echoing her name. "No. You won't take my kids." With a surge of resolve, she swung the knife wildly behind her. It met shadows, stinging and parting them like waves. Light flickered again, a beacon breaking through the murky veil, guiding them. The mist thinned, revealing a path and escape. "We're almost there," she hollered. She pulled her children closer, feeling the tug of hope against the relentless tide. "We can do this. Just a little more." The shadows snarled, clawing and snapping, trying to reclaim what they saw as theirs. But fueled by the love for her children, Jessica didn't look back, even as the specter of her mother cried out in agony from behind. "Jessica! Why are you leaving me?" Terror laced her heart, but she pressed on, forcing the image from her mind. "I love you, Mom. But I won't be trapped here." With each step, the light surged brighter, more real than the grasping darkness. "Faster," she urged, harsh breath slipping through clenched teeth. Suddenly, the icy grip released. A powerful wind gusted behind them, scattering the shadows and clearing the path ahead. Jessica let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Almost there, Lily squeezed her hand, and Marcus echoed, "Mom, I can't keep moving. We're going to be okay," she shouted, heart thrumming loudly in her chest. The warmth of the light beckoned like a haven. Almost home. At last, they broke through. The world exploded in colors, a brilliant brightness that enveloped them. They tumbled out of the mist, breathless. The storm had turned into a light rain, the air fresh and sweet. Shock surged through Jessica, tears streaming down her face. They were free. Relief washed over as she collapsed to the ground, gathering her children into her trembling embrace. "Mom, are we safe?" Marcus asked, eyes still wide with uncertainty. "Yes, we are," Jessica whispered, heart still racing but feeling the warmth of safety engulf them. Light poured from every corner, wrapping around them, illuminating the darkness that tried to follow. Lily looked up at her mother, a smile breaking through the remnants of fear. "You did it. You saved us." Jessica's heart swelled. "No, we did it, together." In that moment, she understood the power of love and belief, how it could banish the darkest fears and summon a light that could break through any storm. As they sat enveloped in warmth on the grass, the rain faded into a gentle patter, whispers lost to the winds. They were home, but as the sun began to rise, casting away the night, a chill crept through her. Jessica knew the shadows would always linger, just out of sight, waiting. But for now, she would cherish this moment, this victory. "Let us go home," she said, pulling them close, ready to face whatever lay ahead, hour of courage and love. Now, as our story winds to a close, let me remind you of the thrilling journey we just took. If you don't want to miss our next exclusive tales, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button to help the story reach those who need it most. And let us hear your thoughts. Flood the comments with your reactions, your theories. What do you think of the conclusion? It's time to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to experience this unforgettable finish. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Only the true fans will understand the importance.